this crazy world right now, parenting seems really scary, like super, super scary. I think one of the only things that's genuinely helping me out is the scriptures. So in one way happy that I decided to do this series of reading the Bhagavad Gita to become a better parent, because I think this is probably one of the only ways that we as parents are going to stay sane in the idea that we're bringing our children up into this world. We might be able to find some ancient ideas and secrets and rules for life that will help us through this period, because that's what the Bhagavad Gita is, right? It's like a rule book for what's going on in the world at the moment and how we should live our life. And ironically, in a stage where we're potentially going to a war, who knows, it'll be really interesting to read this book that is literally the night before the war begin. Like in the first couple of verses of chapter 1, that stands out to me that this is a fight between two families. In Kali Yuga, it's really apparent that this is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And I think what we have to really learn from here is like navigating that, like navigating the quarrel, the hypocrisy, the fights that are going to be happening in our lives, in our kids' lives, and really just trying to remain equiposed. It's really important not to just speculate. So I've taken and I've been reading Keshav Maharaj's Gita 3 alongside this. When you open it up, it talks about the battlefield of life. And he's talking about Mahabharata being the battlefield of life. Originally, it's so interesting because when I was going to start this video series, I was like, oh, I'm going to start from chapter 2. But there's a reason why chapter 1 was written. And one of the biggest things in here is a sentence which he says, it's talking about the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and he's talking about the Kauravas. The former were plagued by greed, selfishness and pride, whereas the saintly Pandavas were individuals of the highest moral stature, dedicated to virtue, devotion and righteousness. When I'm reading this as a parent, it's saying that this is what we have to help our kids navigate and teach them, that this is the battlefield of life, and how are they going to navigate through that? Are they going to be falling towards qualities of greed and selfishness and pride and all of the things that we would call bad or negative qualities? Or are they going to be individuals like the Pandavas who were of the highest moral stature, dedicated to virtue, devotion and righteousness? Like, which path are our kids going to be able to choose? How are we then as parents meant to navigate them towards the path of righteousness and doing the right thing? Especially right now in a world where doing the wrong thing is definitely praised, easier, brought up. The idea of no consequences is definitely there. For me, after the understanding that we should be doing what's right for our children first, and like those are the hard things, and that's one of the biggest things that I got from verse 1. A couple of verses after that is the Bhagavad Gita is not only just a way for me to navigate my own life, but it's to help my children navigate their own life at one point. So the ideas from the Gita of righteousness and dharma, yes, be like this ourselves, but then the next question I ask myself is, how do we implement that in the next generation? How do we make sure that in the next generation, they are, despite the degradation of Kali Yuga and the way that the world is going at the moment, how do they stay on the straight and narrow? Because every child will have a time where they're experiencing things and want to rebel and want to be an individual and do all of these things. From my perspective, you do need an anchor. You need something that holds you in. And this is what Prabhupada is doing in the first chapter and setting the scene to basically be like, this is the battlefield of life. One side will like X and one side will like Y. You have to also decide what way we want to go. What type of children do I want? How am I bringing up the next generation? Do I want them to be more like the Kauravas, or do I want them to be more like the Pandavas? What lessons can we take from their mistakes, their experiences, their learns, their questions, their queries and their behaviors, and try and implement that in some way or another in our life 5,000 years later in a very different world where things are evolving and changing and moving. And that's quite a scary concept. The takeaway tonight is like, what type of kids do I want to raise? What am I doing? And how am I consciously raising the next generation? That is my thought process in all of this. How am I implementing the principles of the Bhagavad Gita in their life? Let's see if the answers come to me as we read on. But that's a bit of a realization. Verses 2 to about 9. That's what I would say. It would be nice if people could read along with me and share their realizations. And if people are, it'll be great. And put them in the comments, and then we can chat. And maybe we can read them out, and then we can read together and understand together in the next video.